everybody, this is a Mars Hill Latin 4 lessons 18, 19, and 20 lecture for week 6 of the summer intensive course. Okay, once again, we're going through a whole lot in 1 week. We're going to talk about the verbals of sum and possum, that is the infinitives and the participles. We're going to talk about gerunds, and we're going to talk about gerundives, along with some grammar points that we'll hopefully get to. What I want you to do is watch this video as carefully as you can. Take notes. If you have questions or things aren't clear, make sure you ask about them on Wednesday. And I'm just going to do the best I can. It's easier, it'll be easier once we get to class and we can talk together about them. So don't get stressed out if you're a little confused on some of these things, but just follow along as well as you can and read the lessons. Have them out maybe while I'm talking, so that you can get the most you can. Okay, so let's start with lesson 18. Here we're going to learn about the verbals, or the participles and infinitives of sum and possum. So you know that sum and possum, which are the to be verb and the word that means can or be able, those are both irregular in their forms and in their meaning. They don't follow and they don't belong to any of the 4 regular conjugations. So they're irregular, and you just sort of have to memorize their forms, whereas the other ones are regular enough that you could memorize a formula. So you have a chart at the top of page 54. The present participle of sum is ens, entis. It's declined like a third declension word. And then the present participle active of possum is potens, potentis. Okay. The infinitives are esse and posse. You know that from having memorized the principal parts of these words. The perfect participle active doesn't exist for either word, but the perfect infinitive active does, and that's fuisse and potuisse. Again, you already know those from memorizing your forms. And then the future active participle of sum is futurus aum, but there's no future active participle for possum, and there's also no future active there's no future active infinitive for possum either, but the future active infinitive for sum is futurus aum. Okay, plus esse. Futurus aum plus esse. Okay, so remember that there's no passive for these words. No passives for these infinitives and participles. Other compounds of sum, like absum, adsum, desum, obsum, and prisum, form their participles and infinitives by adding the respective prefix to sum's verbals. So not all words exist like this, but you want to be able to recognize them. So what do I mean? So words like obsum. So obsum means to be away, right? It's which is from or away from, plus sum, which is to be. So obsum is to be away, or to be distant. So what you do to form their verbals, their participles and infinitives, is you take the ob, which is the beginning of the word, the prefix, and you just add the appropriate form of the verb sum. Okay. Now, there are some what we call defective verbs. The first 3 verbs in your vocabulary list are defective. So those are memini, which means to remember, odi, which means to hate, koepi, which means to have begun. So those 3 are defective. Of these, odi and memini are missing the present system, but their perfect system forms have present system meanings. So bellum odi means I hate war. It doesn't mean as you would expect. I hated war. So it's past in, or rather, it's perfect in form, but present in meaning. Okay. Koepi also misses the present system, doesn't have it, but its perfect systems have regular perfect system meanings. So for Koepi, it is past in meaning and it's past in form. So we have orare Koepi means I began to pray. Okay. Notice that the dictionary form of these words is strange. The first principal part is the first person singular of the perfect tense. The second principal part is the perfect active infinitive. Koepi also has the perfect passive participle koeptus. Okay? So these things just memorize. Don't worry too much about them, just memorize them. So consuevi is technically not a defective word, but only, so that's the fourth one in your vocab list. It's not defective, but Henley and the things you've seen it in only use the perfect system. Okay, another thing from lesson 18 is an introduction to impersonal verbs. So a verb that doesn't have a personal subject is called an impersonal verb. In the sentence, it rains, the word it is a grammatical subject without reference to a real person or thing. So even in English, we say it rains, but when you ask the word, well, what is it? What is doing the raining? It's not really clear. What we mean is there's rain happening, but there's no real subject of that verb. No personal subject or no thing we could refer to. So we say it's raining in English. In Latin, there are several words that are only impersonal, like pluit, which means to rain. And there are other ones like oportet, which is it is proper. It means it is proper. So oportet and pluit are the two impersonal verbs in the vocabulary list for this week. Impersonal verbs are always in the third person, even in their dictionary form. So they only exist in the third person because they don't have a personal subject. They can't be in the first person, which is a person. Can't be in the second person because it's also you or y'all. So the closest and only meaning we can give is for the third person when we use the neuter it. Okay. Okay, so some examples of impersonal verbs are it is raining today, hodie pluit. Another one is nos quistum amare oportet. Oportet, it is proper. Amare, to love, but we have nos, our accusative infinitive of nos amare, that we should love Christum, Christ. That's a good example of an accusative with infinitive sentence where we have the accusative subject and the infinitive verb of the indirect statement. Okay? Some Latin verbs are used both personally and impersonally. So they could be used in the one way or they could be used without a subject. You practiced using two of these in one of the workbook pages, but we have it written here too. So heri pugnatum erat, which is it was fought yesterday, or there was fighting yesterday. And in another one, in regionem perventum est. So that's it was arrived in the region, literally, or they arrived in the region. Okay. All right, let's move on to lesson 19. Okay, now we're talking about a gerund. This is another kind of verbal that we have to know. So the gerund is a verbal noun. In English, the gerund ends in ing, ing. In Latin, every gerund contains the letters nd, which makes it easy to identify them. So the gerund is formed by adding one of two endings. you add ndi, ndi, in the first and second conjugations, and you add endi, nd, to the present stem of the third io and fourth conjugations. Okay, so we have our stems. Let's take amo. Our stem of amo is ama, and then we add ndi, ndi. For the second conjugation, we have mone, and we add ndi, monendi. For the third, remember we're adding nd instead of ndi, so we get regendi, regendi. The third io, we get copiendi, copiendi. And the fourth, we get audi, audiendi. Okay? And these are these are declined, just like a second declension word. Okay, so we get amandi, amando, amandum, amando, etc. Okay, the gerund is a neuter noun. Okay, it's a neuter noun. It has no nominative and is declined only in the singular. Its declension is identical to the second declension. As a verb, a gerund may take a direct object. So let's look at a sentence to get an idea of these, or a part of a sentence anyway. Here's one. Ut cor meum in amando Christum ardeat. So that's in order that, ut, my heart, cor meum, in order that my heart, ardeat, may burn. That's a subjunctive right there. May burn. In amando Christum, in loving Christ. So you have in plus its ablative, that makes a prepositional phrase, and amando there is a verbal noun in the ablative, so in loving. So we translate that with an ing, loving. Okay. So another verbal noun you know is the infinitive. It is only used in the nominative and the accusative. The gerundive is used in the other three cases, genitive, dative, and ablative. So you have a little list here on page 56 of the different uses of the infinitive and when you would use the gerund. And you can look at that. We'll look at it a bit more on Wednesday. You need to be careful because the gerund is not an adjective. To say, I see the boy throwing a javelin, you don't use the gerund, you use the present active participle. So you would have puerum coniectem telum video. So we have I see video, the boy throwing a dart, puerum conicientem telum, where conicientem modifies the boy. It's an adjective describing the boy. Okay? Alright, another thing. Let's talk about time when. So there are different time expressions. There's time when something happens, and to express that in Latin, we use the ablative without a preposition to say at what time something happens. So we have, for example, proximo die ad orbem ambulabo. So that means I will walk ambulabo to the city ad orbem proximo die, on the next day. So we just put those in the ablative case, and that tells us that we're using time when. We're describing the time when. The ablative without a preposition can also be used to describe time within which something is done or happens. In the context, we'll have to tell you which one is the correct translation. So here's another example. Duabus horis pervenerunt. So they arrived, pervenerunt, duabus horis, within 2 hours. Okay? Or another one, secunda hora pervenerunt. They arrived at the second hour. Okay. Okay, another one. We have accusative without the infinitive without a preposition, we use that to show for how long something happens. So we have, for example, 3 horas laboravimus. So we worked, laboravimus, for 3 hours. 3 horas. So if you're wanting to express the time, how long something was done, use your accusative without any preposition, okay? Another use of the accusative without a preposition can be to say how far someone or something went. So here's an example. Puer liginti pedes ambulavit. So the boy walked ambulavit liginti pedes, 20 feet. And we have pedes in the accusative case there. All right? I'm going to skip what the Romans say, but you all can read that on the last part of page 57. And I'm going to talk now about, finally, lesson 20. So we said that a gerund is a verbal noun. Okay, a gerundive is a verbal adjective. It's a participle. It's a special kind of participle. Okay, specifically, it's the future passive participle, and it's declined just like a regular first and second declension adjective. So the gerund is formed. The gerundive is formed similarly to the gerund. You add nd, us, ndus, n-d-u-s, to the present system of the first and second conjugations. And for the third io, and fourth conjugations, you add endus. So ndus and endus. Whereas in the gerund, we added nd and end. Sorry, ndi and endi. So here they look like this. Amandus aum, monendus aum, legendus aum, capiendus aum, and audiendus aum. All right. So the gerundive has a basic translation given in the chart above, but it has also others that we'll learn. So to be loved, to be warned, to be ruled, to be taken. That's a general translation of the gerundive. But there's the gerundive of obligation. This is the most common use of the gerundive. In English, we show obligation by using the word must. So we could say, Mark must be loved. We could also say, Carthage must be destroyed. The Romans showed obligation by using a compound verb consisting of the gerundive and a form of sum. This construction is called the gerundive of obligation. The gerundive will agree with the subject in gender, number, and case. The form of sum will agree with the subject in person and number. So here, for example, we have Marcus amandus est. So Mark must be loved. Okay. And you see that amandus agrees with Marcus, in gender, in number, and in case, like an adjective, since it is an adjective. And est agrees in person and number, third person singular, just like Marcus is. Okay? So the gerundive is a passive participle. An active English sentence that shows obligation has to be written in the passive before translating it. So you can't translate, you must warn the citizens. You have to change it to, the citizens must be warned by you. And the way you do that is you make the citizens the subject, qui vis, and then you want a gerundive, monendi, and then you want est, must be warned est. If you want to say by you, you have to put that in the dative case, which is what we see when we turn to page 59, the second page of lesson 20. In the last example, how would you say by you? You would expect an ablative of agent, okay? But the Romans did not use that construction with the gerundive of obligation. Instead, the Romans used a construction called the dative of agent. In this construction, the person who forms the action of the verb is expressed by the dative case. So here's an example. Urbs mihi capienda est. The city must be taken, capienda est, by me, mihi. So you put it in the dative. Here's another example. Cives tibi monendi sunt. The citizens must be warned, tibi, by you. Okay. You can also translate it. I don't recommend it because it can be confusing, but you can also translate those in the active. So you could translate urbs mihi capienda est, I must take the city. But I think that is kind of confusing way to think of it because you want to express the dativeness of the mihi. So it would be a little bit odd to say, I must take the city. I would rather you translate it, the city must be taken by me. Okay, one more item of grammar and then we can be done. So the last thing is the ablative of comparison. Instead of quam, the ablative without a preposition may be used to express a comparison, but only in the following circumstances. When the word being compared is in the nominative or accusative, and when the ablative would not be ambiguous. So, for example, the sentence Marcus amicum fortius munit legato is an example of an ambiguous use of the Latin of the ablative of comparison, because it could mean Marcus protects a friend more bravely than the lieutenant protects a friend, or it could mean Marcus protects a friend more bravely than Marcus protects the lieutenant. So the problem with these ones is that the ablative is ambiguous, could mean two things. So in those sentences you want to use quam, but in other sentences you can use the ablative. Okay, I hope this was at least somewhat clear. I will see you all on Wednesday where we will talk about the worksheets, reviewing this grammar, and we may get to some translation if we get through all the grammar. All right, God bless you.